Hello everyone, let's start class 9 Civics chapter 3 Constitutional Design, and in the new edition books this chapter is given as chapter 2 children. Okay, so please check the chapter name. Chapter name is Constitutional Design, and now I am going to discuss about the part 1 in Constitutional Design. Starting with the what is constitution? Okay, meaning and definition of constitution. What is constitution? Constitution is a set of rules and regulations that is to be followed by both the government and the people of the country. What is constitution, children? Is a set of rules and regulations. Okay, is a set of rules and regulation that is to be followed by whom? By both the government and the people of the country. Okay, people of the country, the citizen of the country. Okay, so what is constitution? Is a set of rules and regulations that is to be followed by both the government and the people of the country. Okay, both have to follow, children. People of the country means the citizens of the country, and it is the supreme law. We know constitution is the supreme law in a country. That constitution determines the relationship among the citizens. Okay, the relationship among the citizens mentioned, rules are mentioned, children, and also the relationship between the people and the government. The rules and regulations related to the relationship between people and the government is also mentioned in constitution. Okay, so introduction topic, children. What is constitution? What is constitution? Is a set of rules and regulations that is to be followed by both the government and the people of the country. It also determines the relationship among the citizen and also the relationship between the people and the government. Move on to the next topic, children. Why do we need a constitution? We need a constitution for several reasons. Okay, and the reasons are listed, children. Okay, in your book, if you refer your textbook, you can see 4 needs are listed in your book. Okay, first reason is it generates a degree of trust and coordination among the citizens. Okay, why do we need a constitution? The first reason is it generates a degree of trust and coordination among the citizens, and that is necessary to live together. Okay, so why do we need a constitution? The major or the first point is it generates a degree of trust and coordination among the citizens, and that is necessary to live together. Move on to the second point. Secondly, it specifies how the government will be constituted, who will have the power to take decisions. Second reason, it specifies how the government will be constituted and who will have the power to take decisions. That means, children, the basic structure and organs of government is mentioned here. The basic structure and organs. Okay, we know 3 organs, legislature, executive and judiciary. How these 3 organs are working or checks the working of each other, checks and balances, and the powers. Okay, who have the power to take decisions? Okay, who is taking decision? Who is having the power to take decision? Powers of Prime Minister, Parliament. All those things are mentioned in the Constitution. Second point is over. Move on to the third one, children. It lays down limits on the power of the government. Okay, and tells us the rights of the citizens. Third reason why we need a constitution is it lays down the limits on the powers of the government. Okay, that means children, some of you may know we have different levels of government. Levels of government. We have a union government or central government, state governments and local government. These three layers of government. Okay, so who have the power and which are the limits for each layer of government? Lays down the limits on the power of government. These three layers of government, which are the limits of the powers, and the rights, tells us the rights of the citizens. Our fundamental rights are also included in the constitution. And the last point children, final point, fourth, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. Aspirations of the people, okay, our hopes and ambitions, citizens' hopes and ambitions are also expressed for creating a good society. So what we have discussed now, why do we need a constitution? Why do we need a constitution? Okay, we need constitution for several reasons. Okay, and in your book, main 4 points are given. Okay, for exam point of view, we need to learn these 4 points. First, it generates a degree of trust and coordination among the citizens that is necessary to live together. And the second point, it specifies this, how the government will be constituted. Who will take the decisions? Okay, that means in that part children, different organs or branches of government, legislature, executive, judiciary, and how these three organs working each other is mentioned. Third reason, it lays down limits on the powers of the government and tells us about our fundamental rights. Limits on the powers of the government. Here children, different levels of government, central government, state government and local government. Okay, how the powers are divided. Each government has its own power. Okay, so here comes the limits of the powers of each layer of government and fundamental rights. Last one, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. Our hopes and ambitions, citizens' hopes and ambitions for creating a good society is also mentioned. Okay, so we have discussed about why do we need a constitution. Move on to the next topic children. Making of the Indian Constitution. Okay, this chapter is dealing with the making of Indian Constitution. Under this topic, we need to discuss about these 4 questions. These 4 questions. Okay, first question is, how difficult it was for the India to frame a constitution for united India after independence. Second one, what were the main advantages for the makers of the Indian Constitution? Third question, who were the makers of the Indian Constitution? And last one, why should we accept the Constitution made by the Assembly more than 50 years ago? Okay, so under this topic is making of the Indian Constitution. These 4 topics, so these 4 questions we need to discuss. First question children, how difficult it was for India to frame a constitution for united India after independence. Which were the difficulties Indian constitutional framers faced at the time of independence? Second question, what were the advantages for the makers? Okay, difficulties. First question is related to the difficulties faced. Second question, advantages. Which were the advantages our constitutional framers they got from colonial rule? Third is, who were the makers? The members involved in the Constituent Assembly we will discuss. Last question, why should we accept the Constitution after more than 50 years ago? Okay. So, we will take one by one, children. Move on to the first question. First question under making of Indian Constitution. How difficult it was for India to frame a constitution for united India after independence. Okay, yeah. Here children, mainly 3 difficulties are mentioned. Okay, that time people of India were emerging from the status of subjects to that of citizens. Okay, so at the time when our constitutional framers, they wrote the constitution. Okay, they wrote the constitution. That time the people they just got the chance to be the citizen of India. What's the meaning of citizen? Citizen means a free man and a legally recognized member of a country. Before that colonial rule, children. Okay, so Indians were not got the power to be the citizen of our country. So first difficulty was that, children, people of India were emerging from the status of subjects to that of citizens. That means citizen means a free man and a legally recognized member of a country. Okay, so that was a challenge for the constitutional framers. The second difficulty they faced was partition of India. Partition of India and partition related problems. You know, India was divided on the basis of religion. Okay, so partition and related issues. Okay, that was the second challenge before the constitutional framers. And the last one, the British had left. That's a problem with the princely states, children. The third difficulty was the problem with the princely states. Princely states means the areas under regional rulers. Okay, so that means at the time of independence, there were certain princely states. The areas under regional rulers were there in India. So, at the time of independence, British government left to the rulers, to the princely states, to decide whether they want to merge with India or with Pakistan or remain independent. Okay, princely states means the areas under regional rulers. At the time of independence, British government had left to the rulers. They can decide. The regional rulers can decide whether they want to merge with India or with Pakistan or remain independent. Okay, so these three were the difficulties or challenges faced by the Indian constitutional framers at the time of independence. Now, move on to second question. Second question, children. What were the main advantages? Okay, last topic was about the difficulties. Here comes the advantages, main advantages for the makers of the Indian Constitution, whether they got any advantages they got for the makers of the Indian Constitution. Coming to the advantages, children, much of the consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle. Okay, now you know about the freedom struggle, children. So, much of the consensus, general agreements, okay, which all values to be included in the Indian Constitution, that was already decided during freedom struggle. Okay, that's the first point, children. much of the consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle. That is an advantage. Okay, the constitutional framers, they know which all values should be included in the Indian Constitution that actually derived during the freedom movement. Okay, that's the first point, children. I repeat the first point. Much of the consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle. Move on to the second advantage, children. Actually, before framing or before the election or selection of the Constituent Assembly, some leaders, okay, few leaders, they drafted a constitution for India. Okay, so now we will check two such constitutional examples or drafted constitution we can see here. In 1928, Motilal Nehru and 8 other Congress leaders drafted a constitution. Okay, 1928, children, that means before independence. And in 1931, second is in 1931, the Karachi session. Karachi session means it held in Karachi, children. That meeting was held in Karachi of Indian National Congress. Dwelt on how independent India's constitution should look like. Okay, I told you that means both these documents, they have included the values. One they framed in 1928 and the second one in the Karachi session of Indian National Congress. The meeting of Indian National Congress held in Karachi, children. Okay, in that meeting also they have decided, and drafted the values that should be included in the Indian Constitution. And if we refer both these documents, we can see that documents included universal adult franchise, right to freedom, equality, and rights for minorities. Okay, that means all these values are there in the Constitution. Okay, so that these documents help the constitutional framers. That's the second advantage. Now, basic values were accepted before the Constituent Assembly. Before the election of Constituent Assembly, basic values were accepted. Then, the familiarity with the political institutions of colonial rule. Okay, that means, children, colonial rule, it's an advantage of colonial rule. Yeah, it's an advantage of colonial rule, children. That means, Indian Constitution, we have adopted many institutional details and procedures from colonial rule. Okay, now, familiarity with the colonial institutions. Okay, so Indian constitutional framers, they have adopted those institutional setup and included it in our constitution. That's the point, children, the familiarity with the political institutions of colonial rule. Last point, inspired by the ideals of French Revolution and Russian Revolution. That time, children, okay, people of India, they were inspired with the French Revolution and Russian Revolution, and that shaped the values to give importance for social and economic equality. Okay, the constitutional framers, okay, they were given importance to social and economic equality. So, what we have discussed, what were the advantages for the makers of the Indian Constitution? Advantages, what were the advantages they got at the time of independence? Okay, which were the advantages, children? Much of the consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle itself. General agreements were agreed. And before writing the real constitution, okay, they made different documents, and those documents included the values, which values should be included in the constitution after independence, and one such document in 1928, second one in 1931. And comes the familiarity with the political institutions of colonial rule. That means during British period, their institutional setup, and the procedures they followed. Indian constitutional framers, they tried to include it in the constitution. Then, inspired by the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution, mainly two values, children: economic equality and social equality. Now, we'll discuss what we have discussed. Let's recall what we have discussed. We have just started with what is constitution. What is constitution? The meaning of constitution is a set of rules and regulations that is to be followed both by the government and the people of the country. Then, it's a supreme law in the country, and it also determines the relationship among the citizen and the relationship between the people and the government. Both these relationships are included in the constitution. Then, why do we need a constitution? Why do we need a constitution? We need constitution for variety of reasons, and 4 main points are included in your book. Firstly, it generates a degree of trust and coordination among the people that is necessary to live together. Secondly, it specifies us how the government will be constituted, who will have the power to take decisions. There are 3 organs: legislature, executive and judiciary. Third point, it lays down the limits on the powers of the government. Levels of government, children. We have central government, state government and local government. How powers are divided, and the limits. Then the last one, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. Our hopes and ambitions are also included. So why do we need a constitution? Then we move on to making of the Indian constitution. I told you 4 main topics are mentioned. I just converted into 4 questions. And first 2 we have discussed in the part 1. Third and fourth one we'll discuss in second part, children. Coming to the first question, how difficult it was for the India to frame a constitution? Which were the challenges faced by the constitutional framers, or which were the difficulties faced by the constitutional framers at the time of independence? These are the challenges, children. People of India just emerging from the status of subjects to that of citizens. Citizens, a free man, a legally accepted person in a country. That was a challenge. Then second was partition related issues. Third was problem with the princely states. Princely states, Britishers had left to the rulers of the princely states. They can decide either merge with India or with Pakistan or remain independent. These were the 3 challenges. Now same time they got some advantages also. Which were the advantages for the makers of the Indian constitution? Coming to the advantages, children, much of the consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle. That means during the colonial rule or during the freedom movement, much of the values, which values should be included in Indian constitution after independence? They had agreed, discussed and agreed much of the consensus, general agreements. And before writing the constitution of free India, they made several documents. 2 such documents are included, children. One in 1928, Motilal Nehru, and 8 other Congress leaders made one, and in 1931 in the Karachi session of Indian National Congress, okay, they also decided which values should be included. And values, both these documents included universal adult franchise, right to freedom, equality, rights for minorities. All these are there in Indian Constitution, children. Okay, and the familiarity with the political institutions of colonial rule. Okay, that is another advantage, children. That means much of the details and procedures we have adopted from the colonial rule. And the last one, inspired by the ideals of French Revolution and Russian Revolution. French Revolution and Russian Revolution, children, mainly values. Okay, they have given importance for social and economic equality. Okay, we'll continue in the part 2.